At dawn's early 5:30, March 6, 1836, 1,800 men inhaled deeply and slipped into a terror-filled trance. Throughout darkness they crept, silent, no flame, no whisper, their chests pounding with dread. Their quest was stillness, the shock of ambush, vengeance. A solitary trumpet then shattered the quiet. What followed became the siege's deadliest 60 seconds, not by Texan marksmanship, but through dreadful blunders none could stand to tell. Tonight we expose the brutal truth of the strike that doomed hundreds, shared by those who scaled blood-drenched walls and lived to divulge its hidden facts. This is the story films omitted, the minute that changed a land's destiny. At the initial hour of the 6-day intermission, troops rose. By 3 they moved noiselessly toward the stream, paired up crossing narrow plank footbridges. Barriers circumvented to sneak upon the enemy, halting at the commander's selected spot to linger, clutching weapons for destiny's moment. Silence reimposed, no comfort of leaf allowed. The moon shone above, yet concealed by thick clouds, casting only faint gleams on our lines, a fortune aiding our plan. That dim glow, the hush broken solely by whispers, the dawn's chill, the strange peace stretching hours into instants, plus the menace closing on us, all pressed upon our souls. We murmured quietly, yet among the living. Soon many of us would fall mute, returning to the emptiness whence all originate. Some hurt and groaning would stay abandoned for long stretches, each fearing the shriek of a shell that might kindly finish their pain. Yet expectation fired our veins. Shortly this dreadful waiting would end. The insult to our forces, the blood of comrades killed months before inside those same walls, would be repaid. The sky brightened, morning's golden shroud started rising, a signaled bugle's call to battle broke the darkness. Then arrived that terrible harbinger of ruin, trembling through our core, erasing the expression from our faces, wrenching us from dark reflection. Worn from sleepless night, I'd barely shut my eyes when that fatal tone split the heavens. Jose Maria Gonzalez, a sapper's bugler, blew the note preparing us to defy death and seize our fate. In a flash, fear yielded to honor's ringing summons. The battalions surged forward with utmost speed. They'd scarcely started when shouts rang to fire, too early for the guns to hit targets, yet wise leaders disregarded that hasty order. Woken by our warning, relayed through the ranks, the foe shot back violently, though our volleys landed short, stalling our charge. Travis, short on soldiers, had given 3 firearms per fighter. Their opening blast proved quick and fatal. Our ranks left a red trail of wounded, dying, and slain. Units gathered near the leader began the attack. With fervor stoked, we echoed that shout which kindles courage and freezes the adversary's blood. The next battalion, swept by zeal, broke into cries for the Republic and President General, a madness officers failed to restrain, costing them dearly. Drawn by these cries, the foe, as morning lit the field, doubled their barrage on the charging men. A solitary cannon blast wiped out almost all the Toluca foot soldiers, just strides into their advance. Captain Jose Maria Herrera, chief of the Toluca group, collapsed shortly after. Lieutenant Vences likewise fell. Another salvo tore through the front line, and among them stood Colonel Duke. A bullet passed clean through his thigh. Amazing all, one of the colonel's assistants stayed upright, rushing toward him, while the fate of his fellow aide has vanished from record. Luck preserved this horseman, though Captain Don Jose Maria Macotella of Toluca received fatal wounds, dying soon thereafter. The assault plan had been relayed, yet essential gear was overlooked. The divisions were ordered to haul picks, axes, and climbing ladders, but only at the last instant did it become known these tools were absent. The ladders were defective and insufficient. Amid a downpour of grape shot and bullets, the forces bravely advanced to the foot of the rampart, save the 3rd, devastated on its flank by a 3-cannon emplacement on an elevated stand, which tore dreadful holes through its formation. Assaulted head-on from the ramparts, it swerved toward the northern wall's edge, hunting refuge from the carnage. The meager ladders we carried never reached us, their bearers killed or scattered. Only one single ladder from those promised ever showed up. General Koss, desperate to advance, pushed his troops directly where the second and third columns now fused into a jumbled mob. Fortunately, this area's face was timber, its trench shallow, the wall nearly 9 feet tall. Here, at last, a hold climbable albeit with much struggle, yet bedlam took hold. Leaders of every tier yelled instructions lost in the uproar. The bravest fighters scrambled to gain the wall's top first, bellowing for space, treading on comrades. In their zeal, others, trapped in the crush, swung uselessly, blocking the swift, dragging down those set to mount. A lethal storm of fire from the barracks roof and neighboring positions claimed lives, deepening the disorder of our broken ranks. The first to climb were tossed down by bayonets thrust above the parapet, or handguns fired at close range. Still, our soldiers' will did not crack. Seeing comrades fall, they scaled over gore-drenched bodies to take their spot, driven to wreak revenge. Musketry, the buzz of balls, the moans of the hurt, savage curses, death rattles, officers' bellowed orders, battle's din, and the desperate cries of those mounting the barrier melded into a frenzy that overwhelmed all reasoning. The defenders screamed just as wildly, their foreign tongues shrieking urgent warnings that scraped against our ears. From his position, General Santa Anna observed this dreadful sight. Believing the 3rd Unit's effort to locate an opening was a full withdrawal, he dreaded a collapse. So he ordered Colonel Emmett to throw the last reserves into the fight. The Sapper Battalion, already pressing forward, joined the climb. Even the general's personal staff were told to attack, a bold yet pointless reinforcement that added to the disorder and slaughter where it was unneeded. Before the engineers reached the wall's footing under a hail of shot and shell, half their officers were injured. Among them, young Torres perished inside the fort, holding a seized banner, struck down in his moment of glory, quiet and splendid, grieved by his fellows. A strange fate marked this battalion. 4 officers and 21 soldiers fell, yet not one sergeant, though their count often surpasses that of the former. A quarter of an hour passed, our troops trapped in hell's center, scaling hopelessly toward a fate less shameful than being crushed in the mass. At last enough surmounted the wall, order dissolved. The defenders, seized by panic, withdrew into structures flanking their interior yard. Doors sealed, yet their own hastily dug ditches now trapped them. Not all fled. Some held their place, staring at our boldness before shooting. Travis himself never faltered in his determination, only in his stride stopping to face us with a look of defiance, placing his shots with icy exactness. He battled like a warrior of merit. His end arrived finally, but only after he had exacted a costly price. No man among his followers met their fate with greater honorable resistance, and meet it, all of them did. Travis acted with bravery. Fairness demands this admission. With a small force of raw fighters, meager provisions, and against his subordinate officers' advice, he stood against experienced veterans who greatly surpassed him in number. He was a light-haired man, his sturdy frame paired with an unwavering will. Meanwhile, Colonel Morelos and his marksmen, their tasks finished, stood only yards away. Worried our shots might hit them, they knelt in seized trenches, harassing the enemy without harming our men. Fortunately, the merging forces condensed the front, sparing us from heavier accidental casualties. Yet even then, some fell to the rifles of their own side. Grievous was the injury, but more bitter still was the demise. Our soldiers bore surplus ammunition, spare cartridges, and elite units, each man burdened with 7 loads. This surplus was presumably intended to deter use of the bayonet, the blade that is the attacker's true weapon, while marksmen gave covering fire for the advance. But errors flourish in such moments beyond any correction. Remorse alone consoles those at fault, and those at fault were many. Soldiers, some bold, some deranged, burst into the enemy's fortified rooms, met by murderous fusillades. Others, blinded by fury and haze, shot recklessly through gaps, killing ally and enemy without discernment. Thus our casualties grew terribly, yet they aimed seized artillery at the quarters, blasting doors and walls into fragments. Butchery held sway, men were trampled, insanity held power. The very spirits of vengeance seemed unleashed among us. Crowds of troops fired everywhere, at comrades, at leaders, making death as probable from a fellow as the foe. Amid the chaos, orders were screamed pointlessly, drowned by the raging tumult. Let no one think this tale an overstatement. Those present will confirm its truth. To downplay its telling would be a falsehood. In 60 seconds, the gap turned into a slaughterhouse. But the true horror was not Travis's last stand, nor even the blood-coated walls. It was the occurrence that came next. As powder smoke filled the courtyard, Mexican soldiers did the unthinkable. They shot at close range into their own brethren, not due to error, but by order. 75% of the losses were inflicted by their own ranks. The Alamo was not simply taken that morning, it was drenched in brother-killing fire. Why hide this truth? Why allow filmmakers to show this as a heroic assault? Because Santa Anna could not admit. His magnificent victory was a fratricidal nightmare. The true breach was not in the fortress walls, it was in the lie. Tonight you have heard the testimony they sought to silence. So I ask you this, was Travis the last man to perish, or the first casualty of a cover-up? Comment below with what you believe truly doomed those hundreds.